Every town has its own story of the first time black students were allowed to attend schools previously reserved for white students. On November 12, 2014, 50 years after LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act into law, 50 years after Ruby Bridges entered the doors of an all-white school in New Orleans, 50 years later, on this date, a class of 5th and 6th grade writing students came together at Meridian School in Round Rock, Texas, a school that celebrates the fact that 66 languages are represented among its student body. This class came together to discover its own story.
You guys are all here because you chose to write, and you came in here. So the first thing we did is we found your voice, right? You guys had opportunities just to find your voice, and now that you found it, we're going to challenge you, as my teachers did to me, to take it a little bit further. There was a time when if you were Mexican, you went to the Mexican school. And if you were black, you went to the black school. And if you went to the white, you were white, you went to the white school. And it was not all the same. So there were these certain points in history. There's certain choice points that people make. History is not inevitable, is what Lyndon Christensen said. It does not mean that things are just going to happen the way they always have been. There was a certain point where people chose to act. They chose with their writing or their actions to make change when they saw that there was something inequality or injustice. Okay? And that is the strength of your words. That is the strength of writing, and that's what you can do. So today we have some very important visitors who, at those choice points, chose to act. They didn't just sit there and say, this is the way it's always been done. They chose to do something. And you know what, guys? That's what heroes are. Heroes are ordinary people. And so I want to turn this over to them right now, or introduce them first. This is Ms. Ella Sals Morrison. And I'm going to let her tell their stories. And then this is Mr. A.W. Mays, Pastor A.W. Mays.
As she said, my name is Ella Sals Morrison, and I am honored to be here to speak before your class. I was born into a family here in Round Rock, the Salses. My grandfather was the first African-American to settle in Palm Valley back in the early 1900s. He was the overseer of the Palm Ranch, had a family of 17 kids. And my mother was originally from the Austin area, and she was the Hurd family, and her great-great-uncle was the first freed slave from Travis County, and he was a servant for Governor Wood. And I went to, attended Hopewell High School from what we called then Primer. We had a teacher, Mrs. E.C. Freeman, who was my hero. And her mode of teaching was that you learned by singing. And you would sing your multiplication tables, and that made it enjoyable for the kids. But I finished school here in Round Rock in 1964. I graduated valedictorian. But my second semester in school, as it was during the Civil Rights, when the Civil Rights Bill was passed, I wanted to go to school here at the Round Rock High School. So my father and I went to Noel Grissom's home because he knew him personally. He had done work on his house. My father was a carpenter. And we went up there and talked with him, and I told him I wanted to go to Round Rock High School, and he looked at us real funny. Well, it'll have to be introduced to the community, and they'll have to vote on it. And Daddy looked at me and he said, thank you, Mr. Grissom, but we don't think that it's necessary for it to have to be a vote because the law has already been passed, but thank you anyway. So we left. And after we got home, Daddy said, you know, Ella, it's not even worth it. I don't want you to go through that. So it took another 2-3 years before they allowed a black to go to Round Rock High School. And thank goodness for Anthony. He was our first black student, and he excelled in everything. Coaches over at the Round Rock High School, when they would go out of town, they'd have our boys to go with them so they could have a chance to possibly win some of the medals and awards, because their students weren't that well and they didn't excel in track. But they would have our boys to go. When they come back, nobody knew them. We would walk around town and they wouldn't even speak to you. And we need to remember that that's part of history. And I say to every student here, you have a while before you graduate, but respect your teachers, respect your parents, respect yourself, and learn whatever you can. Read, absorb it, and always remember that what you learn in school, you will have that for the rest of your life. And thank you again for allowing us to come.
I also want to appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you. I grew up in Round Rock. I was born in Taylor, Texas. As has been said, the first 9 years we were all black African Americans, coloreds, in those years, and we did not really appreciate, that is, we did not understand the inequity and the unfairness, except that this was the way it was. This was just the way that it was. But I grew up in a school that didn't have very much as far as equipment, as far as class offerings, because the first 9 years of my education, we had multiple class levels in one room with one teacher. But I'm thankful for those teachers that, as humble as it was, I think they did a very excellent job, and many Hopewell graduates have gone throughout this world making an impact, even from such a beginning as that. I think because the teachers really cared about the students and would not allow a student to fail. Let me get to the integration and how that came about. I said to my older cousin that I'd heard that freedom of choice was now an opportunity for the school system. And his casual statement was, "It's a shame that no one's going." And impulsively, I confess to you, I said in that car, 60 car there, going to Taylor, Texas, that I'm going. It was impulsive. It was not planned. It was not something that I thought a lot about, but it was something that almost came out of my mouth. And when he got to Taylor, that is, we arrived at his house, he made the long distance call back to Round Rock to our grandmother, who was bringing us up at that time because our mother had died, and told my grandmother that I told him that I was going to integrate Round Rock High School. Well, that locked me into that decision. There was no taking it back from then. I didn't know what I was getting into. I really had not planned it. There was no committee, there was no strategy, there was no organization. It was simply a 15-year-old who had opened his mouth and said he was going. And once I said I was going, I couldn't take it back. I later learned that probably what influenced the school board to make the decision at that time was the Civil Rights Act was passed. And I think that in hindsight, I look back and saw that they saw what was inevitable, what was coming, and made the choice. And so I was the single African American in my sophomore year, the 10th grade. And I carried consciously within my spirit that in going to Round Rock High School, people were going to get ideas about what Negroes were like through interacting with me. And I had taken it upon myself to be the very best student that I could be. And the person that registered me for class was the late Mr. C.D. Fulks, and there's a school named after Mr. C.D. Fulks. He was my high school principal, and we were one-on-one when I was preparing to enroll. And he said something while I was registering that I didn't really understand. And after getting all the paperwork done, he cautioned me and said to me, "Well, if you tend to your business, we'll tend to ours." And I didn't really know what that statement meant. And so I asked my pastor, the Reverend G.V. Clark of Sweet Home Church, what did he mean when he said, tend to my business and they would tend to theirs? well, I understood that was code language to say that they expected there to be no mixing in this school integration, that if I stayed in my place, that there wouldn't be any problems. So I had that understanding when I enrolled, and I pretty much accepted that I would be the best student that I could be. I'd be on my best behavior, because I felt that attitudes would develop based upon how I carried and conducted myself. The coach of Round Rock High School at that time, Mr. Nelson, met me in the hallway and told me that I was coming out for football. I'm not saying that he asked me, I'm saying that he told me. And he rearranged my schedule, and I became an athlete. I had not intended to become an athlete. I wanted to succeed as a student. But being a Negro athlete and having some minimal ability, I really would say that joining the football team was one of the icebreakers that eased me into the integrated situation, because I had some success in that area. And I can remember suiting up and, of course, going out for football practice and being expected to be a running back, putting a ball in your hand and saying, "This is the play." And I remember those that were supposed to block for me purposefully did not block for me and allowed me to get hit. Well, instead of taking that first lick on the practice field of being ready to fight, I got up grinning. And it seemed from that moment on, there was an acceptance through the athletes of my presence. And it was something that smoothed out the way. But it was not something people were used to. The school board passed a resolution that there would be no more school-sponsored dances. And so my presence caused some Round Rock students not to have the social event, because I think there was a fear that I might come and I might end up dancing with the wrong person. And since I was the only one, there was no one for me to dance with. But I'll always remember that there was some excitement that the assistant coach had when I turned in my first test. And he doesn't know to this day that the fuss that he made over announcing to the class and making a big deal of my grade on that first assignment, that he didn't understand that I took it differently than what he took it. He said, "Tony," and that was the nickname that they gave me. My name is Anthony, but suddenly my name was changed to Tony. And he said, "Tony made an A+ on the assignment." And what I took that to mean is that he didn't expect that I would have that kind of academic level. There were times, in fact, one instance through the situation of feeling isolated, that I didn't really belong, that I had put a distance between myself and my community, that I literally went home and cried across my grandmother's lap, almost as if I wanted to return back to Hopewell, because for a while I felt so isolated that I didn't belong, and she said, "You can't go back, you've got to see it through." In looking back over it, it was quietly done, I believe. There wasn't any things of riots or any hostilities. And I think some of it was because there were people who took up for us that we didn't have to fight for ourselves, such as our coach. That when he saw something was crossing the line of mistreating me, he would discipline that player and let it be known that I was not to be treated in any kind of negative fashion. And I think it kind of smoothed it out. Made some friends, some lifelong friends in that relationship. But it was very different back then than what it is now. And I'm thankful to have had a part in it. Thank you very much.
So this is called Heroes. We are heroes. We don't let history change us. We change history. Not the great heroes in legends or in epics. We are different, in a good way. We are not born amazing. We make ourselves amazing. Like freeing a country with the power of one's voice, or leading a huge cause for equal rights. Though it may seem like we are superheroes, but we're only normal. And that's okay.
Okay, guys, hold on, please.
Okay. Anger is what is wrong with the world, you say. Jealousy is a crime, you say. Discrimination is outrageous, you say. But complaining is all you do.
What did you like? What did you like?
I like because it says complaining is all you do. It just shows that most people in the world just say, well, I wish this could be the thing, but it's not going to happen anyways. But the heroes in the world, they make action of that.
And you guys can do that with your voice. And the way that you can do it, you can say it, and then you might be speaking to one person or whoever's just around. But when you write it, and then you publish it, it gets out into the world, your words get out there, and people read it, that's when social change can happen. That's when justice can happen, okay? And action can happen. So your voices are making a difference. Your words make a difference.